All right. We got Kenzie McClain. He's held many roles. Kearney assistant coach, currently Smithville assistant coach, Jesse's roommate, maybe. I'm not sure, but
Yes. Yes.
state champion, etc. So we're just gonna run through some stories and some experiences he had. So, Jesse, take it away with your first question.
All right. So, you had a really great high school career. You're in the state finals 4 times, but I thought it'd be really good if you kind of like backtrack for us and just kind of ran through what it was like for you getting started, how you got started, and then kind of like were you good early on? How did that whole process go?
Sure. Yeah. No. My older brother, wrestled, and so he kind of got me onto it. No, I was not good for a long time. And I remember distinctly one time being at a teammate's house, and he had some brackets on the wall. My name was on them, him beating me, and it clicking like, wait a minute, like this means something, and I think like right around that time I started getting pretty competitive, and I think I started going to like Perler around 6th grade or something like that. So I didn't really get serious about anything until then. And then, just kind of progressed from there. Freshman year of high school, just kind of ran with it. We had a really good group of guys, and Grant Leedy and Nick Ward, kind of real passionate guys, I guess is the nice way to put it.
Fired up all the time.
So, yes.
Anyways, just went from there. We had a youth coach that would always send us to camps through youth all summer long, and then we'd bring stuff back, and we kind of put a core group of guys together that, it was a great experience, that group of guys, and most of them were a year older than me, but that's really what built my high school career. And does that answer your question a little bit about
I think so. I think you had a funny story in there. I can't remember, but like you're saying, I can't remember if you would get like a reward for wrestling in a tournament or what the deal was back in the day. Was that you? I can't remember.
A reward
or something. I can't remember. It was like if you won or.
Yeah, like in youth wrestling.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I think my mom would buy me a shirt.
Right. Okay.
The shirt, with like the place on the back or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I just think that's good because, it's like you got this guy who's in the state finals 4 times in high school, but it was like, there's incentives out there for people even that are that good, so it's like, it's good. Tell us a little bit about Plattsburgh and kind of building up that program back then, like you said.
Yeah, it was just a group of guys. We were all pretty close, and the coaches, Leedy was really adamant on keeping us together through the summers, and we all shared a common goal, really. And I don't think any of us really said, hey, we're going to go do this. It was more about the process. We just really liked wrestling. It wasn't like we had these listed goals on our mirrors and stuff like a lot of kids do today. We just really liked what we were doing. We were ate up with it. We had a lot of fun, but we always worked harder. The conditioning and the things that we did back then really just kind of made everything else easier. Like the conditioning that we were doing and the motivational stuff that they were doing back then really just made the rest of the process, college and everything else, just kind of normal. It was never like the next level was harder or anything like that. That's all we knew was hard work and small town. So that's all there was to do. And
I was going to ask you about this. I used to coach in a small town in Butler, and it was really hard to get people to buy in. Like sometimes in the small town, like you think Blue Springs or some of these other towns, they're thinking I'm a wrestler or whatever. It's a lot different in small towns. People don't necessarily look at just being really good at one sport. They want to play all sports. So, what was the culture like in Plattsburgh and Plattsburgh's been historically really solid at wrestling anyway for a long time. So what was the culture that made you guys buy into wrestling specifically, I guess?
Sure. I think again, like I said earlier, just a common goal. We just all kind of wanted to one up the next, tournaments and just establish dominance. We just took pride in that, and working hard. And like I said, the passion that coaching staff kind of brought to the table really was the groundwork and all we needed. Their intensity level was pretty high, and that's all it took to motivate us. We all, or at least I did, I play football in the fall and whatnot, but the true passion was in the winter. And I think I even ran track senior year. I did try to do, multiple sports, but wrestling consumed everything.
Yeah. So as you were, going through high school, you're having success, you're in the finals, you're working your way up. What was you had a interesting life circumstance that occurred during high school.
Sure.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Had a kid in high school, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me, and took me to another level. I think maturity-wise at that age, and once that happened, I think it just motivated me, probably to prove a lot of people wrong. At that age, you get a stigma, and that's part of it. And it was a blessing for me because, Jesse can attest. If I didn't have something that grounded me like that, who knows what would have happened. So, it was a good thing, kept my priorities in line. And, like I said, it definitely made me think about the future and what was in front of me, versus just going through the motions and whatnot. So that was quite the experience, and definitely put me beyond my years, life-wise. You start looking at things a little bit differently when you go through something like that. So
how did you balance at that age, like wanting to still accomplish your goals in wrestling, but obviously having some serious, obligations in life besides that?
Sure. It's a tough question, but like I said, I think when that happened, it made me want to achieve goals even more. It wasn't like, well, I've got to back off these things so I can focus on this. It was just like all my goals grew. I wanted to do everything better. It wasn't like I wanted to be the best father, first and foremost, obviously. But wrestling made me that person, a better person, and paid for my school and those things. So it all kind of went hand to hand. It wasn't like I got to cut back on this piece of my life to focus on this. It was just, I'm going to attack every piece, as hard as I can. And I think Jesse will attest to that. There was a lot of not only wrestling, but, going back home and being a dad through college and still trying to pay the bills, working and coaching and do all those things. There wasn't a lot of sleep involved.
Yeah, I don't think anybody slept less. That's for sure. It was impressive. You were tough. So that was for sure. So.
Yeah, Jesse was telling me about it, so I was going to get your take on it, but you were, when you got to college, you were wrestling in college, you were working, trying to, support family, and you got into coaching and everything. How did you put all the pieces of that together?
It just all kind of happened. Luckily, it was just always around good people, so when I was wrestling, life had other plans for me. Had a back surgery early my freshman year of college, which allowed me to focus on some other things, so a blessing again. My sophomore year, I thought I came back better than I had ever been. I thought I was in the best shape of my life. Doctors didn't really want me to wrestle again, but there was no stopping us back then. We were pretty hard-headed. So did it again and then threw my back out again. Had another second surgery. And then I was always around the right people. Caleb Dixon called me after my second back surgery and asked me what I planned on doing. At that point, I was just getting my degree, and I was still with all the wrestlers, living with them, and getting workouts in and all that stuff. And he was coaching at Kearney, and that's kind of how I ended up there. And just went from there. So,
yeah, you coached some pretty good wrestlers while you were at Kearney, and we're actually going to talk to Dixon later this week. But you guys had some good guys, and I'm going to ask him this same question. But what was the common thread, I guess, in some of the better wrestlers you worked with while you were there?
Man, they were all so different at Kearney during that time. Grant Leaf, I don't think he scored much on Tanner Minder. It was just like, there was somebody that could always put somebody in check. And then there was me, Caleb, and Mark Carey, and there's guys in there that if somebody wasn't putting them in check, we would. And we were all fairly young, and so I think that was the common thing. Like, to answer your question, is if somebody needed to be put in check, we put them in check. And everybody could always find a good partner. There's tons of good kids, and back to what I was talking about, Plattsburgh, just a common goal. I mean, those kids wanted to be good, and that was a really, really fun experience.
Yeah. So taking this whole arc to the story, so now your son's in high school. He's a really good little wrestler, and you're coaching him. So now you're, not that you haven't been viewing it through that lens for a long time, because obviously you have, but now it's at the high school level for him. So how do you approach coaching your own son through his high school career?
Yeah, I think the approach coaching him versus another kid, it's all the same. Other than I just, if anything, I coach him less than I would coach somebody else, just because he hears my voice a lot at home, so somebody can only hear the same thing, from one person so many times before it just isn't productive. So with Colby growing up, I always tried to put him in other people's hands as much as possible and learn from others, the Randy Smiths and Brent Haynes and good friends, just talking to Jesse or Beck or whoever it might be, just picking their brains and trying to learn from them and putting together who he was. And when he'd come to me, obviously, and we kind of make sense of it all and put it together. But I really didn't corner him a lot until, this year, his freshman year. So,
yeah. So you've probably observed other father-son coaching duos. And a lot of this applies just to coaching in general, not just father and son, because even like whenever you're coaching someone, sometimes you get, close enough to them that maybe you kind of lose your filter with them a little bit, but probably more so father and sons than anybody. So what do you think are some of the do's and don'ts of father-son coaching duos?
You'll know in your gut, I feel like, if you should be coaching your kid or not, or you should. I didn't want to. I honestly didn't. As great as it's going and it has turned out, I didn't want to jeopardize at any level being a dad to coach him. You know what I mean? First and foremost, just want that relationship being a dad. But we kind of found what works for us, and both of us kind of had no doubt in our mind that this is working, and we can do this. A lot of people shouldn't. I see a lot of dads that should not coach their kid. Just was blessed with a scenario or relationship with him that it's working, and we're constantly evaluate that, right? Like as he gets older and goes through some things, if that needs to change, we'll do that. But as of right now, it's going great. And if you're taking it home at night and you're arguing about it at home and whatnot, I'd say probably not a good idea.
Yeah,
that would be my take on it.
Yeah. Jesse, you got any other thoughts here?
Yeah, just what are you guys, since you are at home with them, what have you guys been focusing on right now during this weird time we're dealing with this quarantine right now?
Sure. Man, you spend all winter thinking about your summer plans and all that, and that's been derailed. So that's been tough, refocusing but right now I think he's just trying to become a better athlete and focusing on those things, just like we're telling all of our kids, make sure we're still doing the right things and making every day count. We don't need to be sitting on the couch all day long and whatnot. So just staying active. He's doing some different things that we've never done before. A little bit of functional pattern stuff along with his regular weightlifting and some cardio here and there. And that's about it right now. So, how far are we out from the state tournament? 2 months out now. So we kind of took a break for a while, just got away from it as semifinals kind of bothered him. And so we just got away from it and haven't really talked about the wrestling, just lifting and getting better. So
I think it's going to be interesting to see like next year when wrestling comes around, kind of what you're talking about. You said you guys kind of mutually decided to take a break, but like everyone's taking a break now. And that hasn't been a thing that anyone's done really, for a long time. So it'll be interesting to see what how everyone comes out the other side of this, I feel like. So sorry, that's a random aside. I just had that in my mind today.
No doubt.
The other thing that I wanted to kind of ask you about is, everybody right here started coaching when they were young. And I think me and you started the same year. I think I was a grad assistant and you were at Kearney. And or you may have even been coaching a year before me, but I just wanted to kind of pick your brain on how you think that your coaching has evolved and maybe changed, and what are the biggest things that you've learned over that time period, because you have had different experiences and you've been at different places. You're at Kearney and then you went to Oak Park, and that was a much different situation, and then back to Smithville. So if you could just kind of, talk about that, starting out when we were pretty young, and then maybe how it's evolved, changed, what you've learned, and how the different situations have taught you different things that you've been able to take away.
Yeah, no, I think about that all the time, actually, how I've changed over the years and my perspective back then. I was really naive. I think, when I first started coaching, I had it all figured out, and the longer you coach, the more you learn. And it just seems like every day, processing, how I'm handling situations and what we're doing changes and evolves. So back then, man, I just thought I knew exactly the way this thing needed to be done. And as you learn different kids, I think, Dixon said, back then there's a lot of driveways going to the same street. So there's so many different ways to get there and approaches to take and learning approaches with different kids. You might be able to motivate one kid and the next kid, you can't be quite as intense. You need to take a different approach, and there, how to approach those relationships, I guess, is what I've constantly learned over the years, and how every kid's different. Because I truly believe that it is all based around those relationships. I've never been in a head coaching position. So as far as a team approach, I don't put as much focus on. I focus on my individual relationships and making individuals better. And that's constantly evolving, I think, over those 10 years. And going from those different schools, the kids were much different, from Kearney to Oak Park, and then, Oak Park back here. It's just a different group of kids, and you're constantly getting acclimated to them, and they're maturing as that goes. And, so that changes. And like I said, back then it was very no, this is the way I'm going to approach this. That's right. It. And now I'm more trying to learn how to, have a broader net, and help more kids. And that's the biggest difference, is just trying to accommodate the kid. And when I was younger, it was more like, no, he's going to either like me or not, and I'll move on. So.
I like it.
This will be our last one. We'll stop recording and we can still talk afterwards. But typical last question we ask is, I'm going to ask it since Jesse's got to ask so many. But do you got an interesting or weird or funny story you can tell from your wrestling experiences? But hey, I'll even give you some parameters. You don't have to, but if it has something related to living with Whitson, you know, you want to tell something bad on him, go ahead and do that too. So.
And I should have known you guys were going to ask something like this. I wasn't quite prepared. There's so many stories. I mean, me and this guy got so many memories going through college together, and man, well, I don't know, Jesse, you want to lead me here? You got any in mind that stand out that need to be told?
Boy.
The problem is we're always like stories for the general public, which is never the case.
Trying to think what filter. Yeah.
I just no, I mean, I think it would just be good to hear like what maybe a typical day looked like for you that when you did start coaching.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah. So
I think people don't realize maybe the effort that you put in to get up there and put in time to those kids, you know, and to your own kid and what you're doing. We kind of talked about this the other night, but I think that'd be a really good thing to share out because it's impressive. And if you want to get something done, you can, and you did, you know.
Yeah. I just never even thought about like pedaling back on goals, kind of what we talked about earlier when, you know, well, did you have to take away from this to do this? And it was like, no, just do everything as hard as you can. And so I'll kind of fast forward to my last semester of college. Mm-hmm. I don't think you even realize, I took 21 hours semester, and I had a full-time job that I ended up, you know, going into after I graduated. So I was taking it very seriously. It was growing very fast. And so I had cameras in my warehouse that I could see from my computer, and I was running this warehouse from my computer, which I was in class looking at, or, you know, wherever it might've been. And then, you know, we won a state title that year in wrestling. So I would go to class in the mornings, go straight to practice, go straight to my son, you know, immediately after that, put him to bed. You know, sometimes I work at night at a job at the bar, you know, and so I'd shut that and go make some money, shut that down, and rinse and repeat, and did that a lot. That last semester of college, like I said, 21 hours, won a state title, being a father, and we still had a lot of fun. You know, we didn't stop doing that either. You know, we were still kids at times, and those are just memories that I think that it's hard to explain to somebody how that all happened or tell that story, because there's so much went into it. You know, we were doing everything. I mean, we were burning the candle at both ends. And, you know, I was watching film, you know, after Colby would go to bed, and, you know, and then talking to you guys about it. And there was just a lot going on in different directions, but I mean, I wouldn't change any of it. It was a great experience. And to this day, there's not a lot of people that, you know, coach outside of, you know, that aren't teachers, you know, high school coaches that aren't teachers. You know, they're there 5 days a week. So just getting to work earlier or whatever it might be, just making it all work. You know, up until this year, it was work, high school practice till, you know, 5, and then Colby's practice would start by 6. So I'd, you know, leave there and then take him to practice, and we wouldn't leave there till, you know, 8, come home, eat dinner, rinse and repeat, you know? So, yeah, it's been busy past 15 years or so.
Yeah.
So I got a question for you. Sorry, this is actually the last one. So Jesse and I are teachers, obviously. So a lot of the big debate in education right now is, are kids okay at home, you know, doing all this work the teachers are sending home? So you will answer that your son is okay doing all the work at home and it's fine.
Absolutely. It's actually enabled him to do more stuff. You know, he knocks that out and then some, and then now he's got time to get an additional workout in or whatever it might be. So yes, absolutely. This whole deal, the way they're handling this stuff, kids can do that and then some, I would think.
No sympathy from us adults to you kids. All right. Life is tough. Get some work done. So, yeah. All right. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Thanks, bud.
Hey, thanks, guys. Love what you're doing.